Hey everyone, Schoolwriter here. This is an essay about the flaws and perks of Kojima's directing and writing, and normally I'd just upload the whole thing. It's more or less 1 hour and a half, but sadly real life writes the plot, not me. While making this video, my cat, Mr. Sunday, got seriously ill and went through the emergency. He's fine now, recovering and under medication, and right on my lap, but to help him I had to basically use all my savings. And I'd do it again and again without any hesitation. I got some loans and thus I'm not under risk of being kicked out, but as a freelancer I have to pick up the pace and find more work in order to replenish my account. Thus, to keep up a steady weekly schedule, I broke this video into chunks. I'd also rather offer something if you are interested in helping. Thus, if you want to watch the whole video at once, you can just go to my Ko-fi page and make a donation. Now, if you want to give some help but you can't donate, just give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. If you enjoy the content, of course. Anyway, onwards with the review. So, while going through Death Stranding 2, I gathered so much material analyzing just the directing and the writing that I decided it would make me better to just separate it into a different video, because, as usual, if I think something is bad, I like to explain why I find it bad. And what I found here wasn't pretty. Having played every single mainstream Metal Gear Solid game, I can say for sure that I'm quite familiar with Kojima's work, even if I couldn't play his older titles such as Snatcher or Policenauts. Why now though? Why Death Stranding 2? First, because unlike the masses of Metal Gear Solid 4 and 5, Kojima was free from Konami's shackles when making Death Stranding. Second, this is his most recent game, arguably where his techniques should be at their best. And third, while several of his problems of writing and directing are endemic to all his games, making a precise comparison of every single plot hole or cohesion problem or retcon of every single game he made would make this video's length skyrocket to a point it would make it viable as a tool to induce coma or be used to euthanize patients. Oh, and needless to say, this essay will openly discuss spoilers. There will be no restraints whatsoever, both to Death Stranding 1 and 2 and games that I will use as examples such as Expedition 33. And as usual, if you liked this game, if you love Kojima, good for you. I myself will be the first to say that he has really good ideas, that the first Metal Gear Solid was a game changer, and that his quirky style is vital to this stale industry. I love the third Metal Gear Solid, and Snake Eater is, unironically, no joke, among my top 5 James Bond intro songs ever. I will also be the first to admit to be completely wrong about Metal Gear Solid 2. When I first played it, I thought that the idea of controlling the internet and replacing people with AI was stupid. Nowadays, but here's the thing. Just because I love someone's work or because said work is quirky or absurd doesn't mean that it's immune to criticism. Quirky, Cambridge defines it as unusual in unattractive and interesting ways, whereas Merriam-Webster defines quirk as an abrupt twist or curve, or a peculiar trait. And for the purpose of this video, let's use those definitions. Let's think of a quirky storytelling as a story that possesses ideas that seems nonsensical, or plays with the fourth wall, or presents themes, characters, or situations in bizarre ways, curved, twisted, but in an attractive and interesting way. But even then, those are extra flavors. You are still writing a story. For example, Endgame from Samuel Beckett is still a play about a family crumbling down, even if the two older members of said family are in sand barrels. Luis Fernando Verissimo wrote short stories about families being hilariously out of touch with each other while ludicrous stuff happened, like a kid receiving a magical sword for his 7th birthday. Sometimes the quirk is actually integral to how the work is received. For example, Memento wouldn't be so memorable if Nolan didn't break the narrative into chunks. Wes Anderson's quirky style is done through his angles and color use. In Kojima's case, he uses weirdness all around, from the setup itself, breaks of the fourth wall, to suddenly twisting the narrative or presenting just bizarre stuff from the left field. His most famous quirky twist was Psycho Mantis reading the player's memory card in the PS1. In Death Stranding, both 1 and 2, we have a surreal scenario where death is messed up and the whole world was affected by it. And honestly, it's a bizarre breath of fresh air. In most post-apocalyptic scenarios, we have the generic monsters did it, or an AI did it, or war did it, or a disease did it. And there's a lingering feeling that if mankind shapes things up, things may just be as good as they were before. Not in Death Stranding. This is a scenario where an apocalypse was interrupted and death was irrevocably changed. Mankind will have no terraforming its way out of this one. Every single facet of this world has been forever changed and must be adapted to. You have tar monstrosities, cannibal ghosts, and people with a pathological need to deliver parcels to the point of violence. And all this was made to justify the reliance on porters. People eat giant tardigrades as if showing that if something is seemingly indestructible grows up too much, it's turned edible for another species. If this isn't creative, I don't know what it is. This quirky base was well used, with everyone in underground shelters and bunkers separated from one another, great tones and technology focused on countering the newest problems, which gave the scenario a sense of believability. There was still the usual set of bizarre outside flares like dancing dolls, fourth-wall breaks, and pizza chefs that know kung fu. But the problem was how the story was told, and in the second game, also what was told. In the first game, Sun is an immortal who is tasked with linking the old USA through the equivalent of the internet. In the process, he bonds with a fetus in a jar, adopting her as his daughter, meets new people and rediscovers his humanity. But at the same time, he is unknowingly empowering the entity responsible for the Death Stranding. He is hunted by Cliff Unger, who seems to be after his BB, but is actually his father, and faces off Higgs, a deranged porter who tried to blow up an entire city. In the end, the human kinship and bonds rekindled by Sam and all those whom he meets in the way enable the Death Stranding to be delayed. The game ends with Sam adopting the baby and escaping to live in seclusion because even if he saved the whole damn world, the rule of drama says that he must still be an outlaw. Boy, talk about inventory protocol. But first things first. The second game basically starts 1 year later, with Sam returning home with Lou, his daughter. Both are found by Fragile, Sam's pseudo-romantic interest from the first game and fellow piece of walking wood, who asks for his help in a small delivery task due to her powers getting worse. She stays with Lou while Sam goes to make that delivery in Mexico. Sam's finds Deadman, they have a nice conversation about the plot that's going to happen, and right off the gate we face one of the biggest problems of Kojima's directing and writing, the pacing. Let's just pretend for a second that writing and directing are akin to baking a cake. In this case, the structure of a story being the order which you put the ingredients. Structures can sometimes be switched around by a good storyteller, like the aforementioned Memento, but the pacing is something more focused. It shouldn't be interrupted, like the time you put the batter in the oven and wait for the cake to grow. The pacing can also be seen as the rhythm akin to music. It doesn't have to lead always to a climax, be it tragic or explosive or etc., but it has to guide the scene, like a tender conversation between friends evolving and emotions building up. Sam finds Deadman in Mexico, and I gotta be honest, I didn't even know he was in that specific facility. They have a heartwarming scene where they are reminiscing about the past, talk about how Lou and the pacing leads to a genuinely bittersweet scene where Deadman reveals that he has already passed away. The cake is growing, so this moment shouldn't be interrupted, and sudden boss battle. Literally. Both characters are talking, or well, Deadman is delivering exposition, and then you have to leave to fight a giant tarhead, and then come back to the rest of the exposition. It's as if in Titanic, Rose stopped in the middle of Jack's tearful farewell to kung fu a seagull out of their makeshift raft. Hilarious? Yeah, but that would absolutely obliterate the tone of the scene. This is the baking equivalent of just opening the oven while the cake is growing to let out all the hot air, and this kills the cake. I genuinely don't know why someone would do such a thing. And for the love of God, do not tell me it's because it's quirky. Deadman using toys to deliver exposition is quirky, That interrupting is just bad directing. Why not put the boss battle before the meeting, or after? If the problem was that the cutscene was too long, either trim the fat or just make it entertaining enough to make the players not mind the length. And this is a problem that Kojima repeats over and over and over through this game. For example, there is a scene where Fragile talks about how one of the people in the ship may be acting weird. And then right in the next scene, it's revealed who was doing the weird stuff and why. There's no time to build up the suspense or pondering the questions, it's just tossed at your lap. You find a grown-up Lou, 3 missions later she's already running away. So either the pacing of the scene or plot point is rushed in order to deliver its intent, be it anger, resolution of a problem or sadness, or it just goes on and on and on without a proper payoff. And the bigger the hit you want to deliver, the longer and more careful is the setup. Speaking of, after beating the boss and seeing that Deadman died, Sam rushes home, and anyone who has seen more than 3 action movies knows that something will happen to Lou and Fragile due to the dialogue. "Hey, we are waiting for you," has the same weight of "look at the picture of my girlfriend in war movies."
Things just couldn't be better for us. I'm so blessed.
Oh, your life insurance forms came for you to sign.
Oh.
Oh, my mirror.
In the middle of this trip to get home, Sam fights some robots and receives the help of a cyber ninja. Robot people appear, kill Lou and shoot Fragile. Except that it's instantly obvious that Lou isn't dead. Being transported to a beach isn't a death sentence in this universe, and even then, she's only shown as a corpse in a nightmare. And honestly, I think that Kojima doesn't have the balls to kill a baby. You'll see more about this later. Now, let's pause a bit to talk about expectations. When I tell you I'm gonna bake a cake, I'm not only setting a plot point, as in something that will happen in the future of the story, but I'm also building on your expectations of seeing me bake a cake. There are several ways of dealing with expectations, but for simplicity's sake, let's just assume the main trio. I can fulfill the expectations and make you a cake, I can ramp up the expectations and talk about how I'm going to bake the best cake ever and deliver it, or I can subvert the expectations and deliver you a quiche, which is a kind of cake, right? But the main thing when building up expectations is that you have to keep in mind of how many of them you've built, the size of the expectations, and keep them in the viewer's mind till you fulfill them like a checklist. And you have to fulfill or subvert the expectations. If you don't, you just broke the player's expectations, and that just leads to frustration. If you don't keep stoking the fires of the expectations, it will grow cold and the player will just forget about them. When Kojima went the "we are waiting for you," he set up the expectations, but didn't build a lot around it, only setting a sense of urgency when it was time for Sam to get back. Honestly, there wasn't much wrong with the scene, it's just that it could have been done much better. For example, tying up with the pacing, the first part of Expedition 33. We are presented to Lumiere, and right out of the gate there is a sense of weirdness being built. Everyone's talking about something tragic, that it's about to happen. The pacing is slow, so the player can take in what's going on at their own leisure, but the expectation is maintained by constant conversations. And then ramp it up when we learn that Sophie, Gustav's ex-girlfriend whom he still loves, is going to die. And here's the kicker. While the expectations ramp it up, the pacing still keeps the same. It's still a walking through Lumiere and a bittersweet farewell. We know she's going to die, we expect her to die, but rather than immediately killing her, the writing uses our expectations against us. It keeps fleshing her out even after we learn that she's going to die to form a sense of attachment, like cattle getting ready to be slaughtered. There aren't any side quests to detract from this horrific event. At best a small fight with a mime, but this is a side content and it's not so brusque as to interrupt the pacing. And then it happens. The people start dying. We still have a shred of hope that Sophie will be the exception to the rule, but no, she dies as well, and then the game starts. It's the first gut punch that this game successfully delivers through a really good pacing and managing expectations, setting the whole tone of this game. Now, back at Death Stranding 2, this start is just not that interesting on its own. Actually, bizarrely, the first game had a better intro to set up its tone, with Sam carrying the body of his mother, the President of the United States, to the crematory. It was a really long track to reach that point, but not even I can deny that it was impacting and did set many solid expectations, comparing it with the "oh no, my sweet is going to suffer" of the second game. But going on, let's put a pin on these plot points and the expectations that Kojima set. First, people that look like a new religious sect showed up to shoot Fragile and Lou. Second, a red robot ninja just helped Sam. Third, there are new weird gates showing up. Now, what's the next step? Turns out, Sam basically falls into a deep depression. Well, while this is realistic, it goes a bit against the expectations already established. Sam was shown to be a guy of action that just bulldozed through several robots to save Lou from danger. He has been shown to be driven and not afraid of killing when needed, so the expectations raised would be that he goes into a roaring rampage of revenge. Him having a complete breakdown breaks the expectations raised and would be more fitting if he just lost Lou due to an accident where he'd blame himself, or if he had been shown that his investigations led nowhere. Remember, just because something is or isn't realistic doesn't mean it would be good for the narrative. Things must be engaging to keep the player locked in. But anyway, on to our next step, the characters. Fragile shows up again some months later in order to enroll our traumatized Sam into a new task. Turns out the new president of the USA or something hires Fragile's new team to go to Australia through a special plategate that showed up after Sam linked USA. Now everyone gathers up with the intent of also linking the whole continent of Down Under into the chiral network, so a new plategate may rise up. Fragile thinks that this would be a good opportunity to help Sam heal from his trauma, and even if it was just some months ago, nabs Sam to go alongside her. In Australia, most stuff is conveniently ready since the expeditionary groups already went before to lay most of the groundwork. They meet the crew composed by Tarman, his cat, a head that is totally not Die Hardman from the first game, since he's voiced by Die Hardman. Dolman, the best character of the bunch, and soon they are joined by Rainey, Hartman, and a woman who totally isn't Sam's daughter Lou. I mean, Lou is sent to the beach and they nearly immediately find a woman in the land of the dead. It's totally not the same person, right? And in the middle of in-your-face names, Lou ends with the worst name of them all, Tomorrow, which is too much even for Kojima, so I'll just keep calling her Lou. As with the pacing and expectations, not only each one of the characters that come on board of the Magellan, but also several characters that you meet through holograms suffer from a serious problem that the narrative tries to compensate in the wrong way. Normally, characters are introduced to the plot in the most convenient manner in order to properly keep things flowing. In games with groups of protagonists, you are presented to the main cast as best and soon as you can in order to develop them as the plot flows. For example, in Expedition 33, the main core of characters is shown right away with 3 additions later. Death Stranding 2 instead keeps a long cycle of introductions, nearly immediate backstories, and then 1 or 2 missions before another long introduction, which leads to an annoying cycle of "hey, let me introduce you to X, hey, let me introduce you to Y, hey, let me introduce you to Z." And Kojima really wants you to love his characters as fast as you humanly can, except that they don't feel like people, they don't talk like people, they aren't people, they are plastic concepts barely attached to the reality they live in. They feel like straw men carrying a single topic or belief. This has been always a problem with Kojima's writing, especially in the Metal Gear Solid games. But since they were war drama pieces focused on the spy action and everything revolved around the leads, the exposition to these straw dolls was limited. Here it's different. This is a game about human contact. But to properly draw emotion from the player, these characters need to be fleshed out. They need to have good dialogue that can relate to the player even if they have completely different lives. This needs pacing, this needs proper build-up, patience and control. When we meet Gustav or Mael or several of the side characters in Expedition 33, they slowly present their backgrounds to us. We see how they react under fire. Thus, we grow attached to them, even if they aren't the ones in the thickest of the fray. But this takes time. And as I said before, Kojima doesn't know pacing. So whenever Kojima needs to present a new character, In order to draw the most empathy as he can from the viewers, we are nearly always immediately presented with their sad and horribly written backstory, and in order to be as endearing as they can, they are absolutely lavished with praise. A bunch of the most perfect, cute little things devoid of any basic flaw. Every single one of them. Be the main characters of the Magellan or the people sheltered in the bunkers. And every single one of the main characters' stories is so cranked up with cheap drama, they end up hilariously, insanely stupid. Seriously, Tarman? He lost his son and the arm because he was in the middle of an ocean of tar. You know, the extremely lethal stuff. They pull a freaky tar whale, and the son decides that the best course of action when surrounded by liquid death is to immediately go out and check an insanely unstable unknown creature. Almost like that biologist in Prometheus. Rainy? Her Doom's power is that whenever she goes outside, it starts raining. Except that within a 1.5 meter radius from her, things actually are rejuvenated. Her power fluctuates as the story demands. But because she attracts the rains that kill people, people label her a witch and pursue her in the middle of the death rain just to chase her off. My man, if anyone in that scenario had the power of making constant death fall, either they'd be instantly killed off and burned, or they'd be revered as gods of death and used to their best abilities. And that's not still accounting that she is a mobile fountain of youth. Dolman's story is at least told in the last leg of the game, and is the stupidest of the bunch. His wife died in a tar wave inside the hospital, became a ghost, and he decided to bring his daughter to visit Mommy's spirit. He brought his daughter to the equivalent of a nuclear minefield because she asked him too much about it. And when the spirit of his wife freaks out and they die, I wasn't sad, I wasn't moved, all I could think of was, duh, of course this would happen. And what's worse is that all these stories could work with just a little tweak, like make Rainey be found in something analogous to slavery like the idol of a cult, or be used by a small group as a weapon or to grow crops instantly, and Fragile smuggles her out. Make Dolman's daughter sneakily follow him without him realizing until it's too late, which would add a special tragic gravitas here. If he didn't let go of his wife wouldn't have killed him and his kid. Make Tarman the one to send his son out in the middle of a storm for a repair or something, making him directly responsible and wanting to make amends. Anything more interesting than stupidity driving tragedy. After the sadness is shown to the viewers, everyone keeps praising each other, patting each other on the back full of smiles. Nothing but compliments about how they are great, and they never bicker or disagree. The guy at the distribution center is just a kind soul that helps starving looters. The musician dreams about a world where everyone can just jam together. Rainey is so cute and sweet, acting like a mother to Lou. Except that all this push to like these characters backfires and I get utterly sick by the extreme sugarcoat. They don't feel real. In fact, this is the point to introduce another important side of the characterization. If they are just perfect, smooth dolls that just get along, getting good character interactions just became insanely harder. But let's backtrack just a little bit. Remember the robot cultists I put a pin on? We see them in two other scenes. Their haunting visage being well directed, making the player ask questions about who they are. Perhaps they are a group that worships the tar. Perhaps they are a cult that wants to dominate the beaches, raising expectations. Except that right out of the gate, as soon as Sam reaches the first main base, it's revealed that it's just Higgs, the villain from the first game with a bunch of robots. No assistants, no side characters, no underlings, just Higgs. In the first game, his role was contained and he was more serious, even if unhinged. But now he goes absolutely ludicrous bonkers with guitars, makeup that resembles Kiss, and bizarre powers. I gotta admit that I do like the getup and the gimmick with the masks, but that's more for the design. And honestly, Higgs returning was a horrible choice. First, it removes the possibility of creating a new antagonist to match wits with Sam, discarding all that was really interesting religious iconography and potential plotlines. shooting, not subverting the expectations raised. Second, the plot keeps using him as a get out of jail free card over and over and over without rhyme or reason. He teleports as the plot demands, gain new powers as the plot demands, ignore rules established by the plot, etc., etc., etc. He can seemingly get inside the Magellan at will, and at one point in the late game, he pulls out of his ass a special flamethrower that can burn Sam eternally. Why didn't he use this before? Third, and the biggest problem which leads us to our next segment, is that he is the wrong villain for the wrong game. His motives are shallow. He just wants revenge and to make some suffer. His methods, while bombastic and entertaining, are one-dimensional and vague. As I said before, he just spawns in the scenario at the whims of the already flimsy plot. As for his personality, Higgs is an insanely boring character by himself. The archetype of chaotic bastard with a miserable past can be interesting if set against the right protagonist, but by itself it ends as just another Joker clone. And the key word is the right protagonist.